I know that Terminator has, in the background of its story, it has science fiction and robot uprising and time travel, but what really makes the good movies good, of which there are few and increasingly swamped by sequels, is simplicity. So I know it seems like a contradiction in terms, but it's just being chased is frightening, being physically outmatched is frightening, and the thought of inevitable apocalypse is obviously really, really unsettling. And that's it. It's just nightmares. It's just scary nightmare stuff. You want it to be visceral and physical and not too fantastical, and that's what makes, Terminator 1 and T2 really good, and it's what makes Terminator 3, in my opinion, not even gonna lie, actually pretty passable, got some decent set pieces, and yeah, we've moved on from there. This is a franchise that I don't fully understand its longevity. Terminator Salvation kind of seemed like a good idea until we saw it. What are your thoughts?
Like you said, the ratio gets ever smaller in terms of good to bad. Yeah, we're now at 33% unequivocally good, which isn't a good place for any franchise to be at. Really, really interesting franchise. Kind of changed the game. Helped to make Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Made James Cameron as well.
Cameron,
made everyone.
Good CGI. I think like unfortunately you said, like the world has changed. It's just missing something. Yeah, this is Terminator Dark Fate. Everyone's old.
Yeah, everyone's old, which didn't actually have to be a problem. It could have been kind of awesome, especially with Linda Hamilton, but yeah.
As of that age is a real chance for pathos. Lots of nearly right stuff, but not enough.
And sometimes sabotaged itself as well. I think we both spotted a lot of those same moments.
For some context, like James Cameron is back in control of the franchise after an inordinate time, I guess 30 years. He has made what is now the canonical sequel to Judgment Day. The other ones, while happening in the sort of multiverse, are all part of timelines that didn't actually happen. Now we have this. These are some pretty famous characters in the pantheon of film at this point, and they have a thoroughly lacklustrous day out.
I think the thing that I found most bizarre about the context of this movie, James Cameron, as you say, saying it's the canonical sequel to T2. Well, I suppose it's supposed to be a wiping of the slate, a la Halloween, but this is kind of Halloween, 2018's evil twin, because that was a great wiping of the slate where it took what was good about Halloween and then proceeded in an interesting direction that hadn't been pursued before. Whereas Terminator Dark Fate, a movie, by the way, that we had loads of goodwill for, we did not walk in cynically. We've seen all of them but Genesis. Considering he was insisting on wiping the slate clean, all he did in this movie, in his eyes the third Terminator movie, in the rest of our eyes the sixth, was go over beats that had been explored in Rise of the Machines, Salvation, apparently Genesis, but in kind of, it seems even to me like in a worse way. And also kind of he seems to have amnesia for some of the themes that were really well explored in Terminator 2, because he explores them in a way worse way this time, and also the characters who lived through T2 act like they never had that emotional growth.
Yeah, I don't think he did his research, which is really strange when it's the things that you made, and I can understand that some of it might get hazy, especially when you've done so much in between. But you should probably go and revisit all 3 hours. I mean, that's all you need to really go and absorb. I don't think watching Terminator 2 and then watching this film be a very rewarding experience, because the characters would seem so disparate. It's just a big issue, and it's not the only issue by far. Really lacking CGI for a film that again is known for its CGI.
Oh yeah,
is awful. I actually thought we were watching a car advert when the film started. The film starts on a beach scene with almost like a doomsday-esque tank trap on a beach in Guatemala, which doesn't make any sense to me because they're fighting little robot machines. Don't get caught on tank traps, but either way, they come out and they look so bad that I was just like, oh, this must be a Nissan advert. There's just a car's going to drive past as the fight happens. It's going to be oh, stay safe. You keep your family safe in your car. But no, that was the film. That was the actual film. It was terrible.
Even in Terminator Salvation, they use a lot of physical Terminators. And in Terminator 2, in the flashback scenes of Terminator 2 and Terminator 1, they used physical Terminators. And I'm not being a dick here. I'm not being a spoiled moviegoer. This movie had the direct involvement of James Cameron. Did he not? He's got them in his office. He's got Terminator puppets in his office. Could he not have just used a few of them? It's just a metal automaton.
Yeah, I mean, he's got so much money and so much resource. And again, the authority of the author behind this
Hmm.
stuff. This could have been a really great piece, and I think they even had like most of the puzzle pieces. Like they weren't denied anything. Like they had Arnie, they had
Linda Hamilton.
thank you, Sarah Connor, and
No problem.
they had, and I really liked Mackenzie Davis in this film. Actually, I think she's pretty great. I think she was being given some bum direction and resulted in some terrible lines, but I think
Hmm.
overall she looked the part. When she wasn't just a CGI puppet, then she was physically acting quite well. She's that sort of like not conventionally attractive sci-fi heroine. Like I think she could easily be the next Sigourney Weaver. So like big thumbs up there, but just like complete squandering of her and Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger in terms of like the dialogue and the plot that they've got to engage with, and the action scenes that they've got to like work around.
There are going to be some spoilers. We've been quite negative up to this point, but movie starts very strange. It basically sets up that we're following on from T2. Judgment Day has been averted, but oh no, John Connor gets shot by another Terminator they were just sending back loads of Terminators. This sets up Sarah Connor as being this character who had obviously failed in one regard, as in protect Son, but succeeded in averting Judgment Day. That should be kind of the focus, but that's almost incidental, and I feel almost not even realised as being so obviously core to her character, by David S. Goyer, fucking idiot. And then, we've got two Terminators, except one of them is actually an augmented person, and a new John Connor, who's actually the new leader of a new resistance, and it's also a new Skynet. And, I guess the problem I had was that, so, Mackenzie Davis, we've got Sarah Connor, who is kind of squandered, which we'll talk about later. We've got Arnold, which is really bizarre, momentarily good, mostly bad in my opinion, but
Ooh.
these new characters, I'm really interested in these new characters in theory, but it's literally just a woman who is in no way developed. John Connor, young John Connor, has oodles of personality, and they really set him up as this kind of rogue and rebel. I don't really remember any kind of character establishment going on for this new person.
She loves her. She loves her family. That's the she.
Yeah, there you
She's
go.
slightly critical of her father and brother. Disappointing character, because it would have cost nothing in terms of screen time to flesh her
No.
out. Like she has loads of scenes establishing who she is. I guess all they wanted to focus on is the fact that she's nobody, but nobody's not that interesting.
John Connor was just a kid. You kind of got the nobody aspect from that as well.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, what was she called? She was called Danny Ramos. She was kind of the dead center of a movie. The augmented half Terminator that was sent back in time, Grace. The problem I had with her is that she just didn't have any kind of plan. She just showed up and kind of messed up. We get Sarah Connor, who's also says that she hunts Terminators, but herself doesn't seem to know so much about what she's doing. And then they amble through the plot, because she has coordinates tattooed on her gut. And then they just get pushed by the screenwriters from pillar to post until they accidentally resolve things. Not even in the way that they intended. And it was just really fucking tedious, man.
I keep forgetting, but this is David S. Goyer. This famous curse is that perhaps he is the reason that it does feel so listless, because they just sort of shamble onwards, and there's a real like dissonance, I think, between how competent these people are at fighting and how incompetent they are at any other part of the adventure.
Logistics.
Yeah, exactly, because like Mackenzie Davis is like quite an incredible fighter in this. There's two scenes that stand out in my mind where she uses a hammer, and when she uses this like hook and chain thing. And she is like by margins incredible. Like it's even against the Terminator, who is supposed to be this sort of like, where is this unrelenting force? But yeah, like you said, like sent back in time with absolutely no plan or agency. There's like invisible hand, not even pushing them, but just sort of like gently prodding them in a direction every so often.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I feel like Terminator in this just cheated. Like he just accessed drones and accessed the kind of global data network to spy on them. And what I like about the first couple of Terminator movies is it's coming for you. It will use everything at its disposal to get to you, but it could be round the corner or it could be miles and miles away. But in this, it was just he will eventually hijack a drone, and then back he will be. And we will re-enter that part. I want to talk, with Linda Hamilton's character. I thought this was a great opportunity. When she first showed up, I was like, that's awesome. She's like, hunt Terminators, like, fair enough. Your son's dead. She just didn't make any sense at all. She said that she got text messages telling her where Terminators would be. She didn't know where they came from. It would be part of her kind of project to find out where they were coming from, to find out more, to see if it was a time travel thing, to see if there's some way to get John back. Just all the things you would assume if you lived in a time travel place. And then also, the movie never ever has a negative reflection on the fact that now there's a different kind of Skynet. She just goes, humans, they never learn. It's like, no, you stopped Judgment Day at great cost and then lost your son, but now Judgment Day is going to happen anyway. Like that's a really emotional thing that the filmmakers could easily tap into and don't. It doesn't seem to motivate her. It doesn't seem to demotivate her. I just don't think that they got it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think it's David S. Goyer. Like, we've seen this so many times. Like, he just doesn't understand how humans work, and he writes like an event, and the event is fine because in his mind he's like, films have events in them, films have scenes in them, but he doesn't think of the ramifications of those events. Because like, there is so much Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger like should have felt in that film that they just didn't. And I don't know why James Cameron signed off on this, because if I read this, I'd be like, well, this is missing large chunks of what it needs to because I think he's got the third writing credit. I can't remember who the guy in the middle is, but don't know how involved he was. It was just so strange to me that this was allowed, because it seems like a waste of everyone's time. Some of the dialogue is terrible, some of the deliveries are terrible. If that's the best take you got from them, then that's terrible. Like,
she practically slurs "I'll be back," and it's just like, was that it? Could you have saved that for a different time? And then, if you're gonna do it, do it.
And then there's that awful bit where she talks about getting blackout drunk every day, which could be great. Like, that could be a really like poignant moment if it was delivered not just as like an addendum to her day, like she's just like laying out her schedule. Instead, you could have maybe shown that she has a drinking problem. That might have been fun.
Yeah.
You could have indicated that perhaps the emotional toll of being a temporal time hunter, not fully processing the death of your son, perhaps even in tangent with the fact that the apocalypse, his death supposedly, helped to prevent, maybe. Again, vague at best, is still happening, all while throwing in the man who assassinated, or the robot who assassinated him. Yeah, there's just so much to work with. Like, this franchise isn't doomed to be terrible, and we know that because we've had two good ones, and I do believe that a third good one, genuinely good one, unequivocally good one, could exist.
Would you want to tell me where you fell on the kind of Arnold introduction into this movie?
So I think I liked him more than you, judging from what you said. So I basically, and again, this is probably a poor reflection on the film because it didn't suspend my disbelief, but I basically categorized every character into their physical performance and then their CGI action scenes. In terms of CGI Arnold, I was having a good time with him. I liked how he fought, and I always, because ever since the end of Terminator 1, the Arnold model has always been at a disadvantage. I like watching him fight the newer models, and I thought he did it well this time. I thought he had some brute strength to him that was very but sort of like that old and like honed version of it, and that worked really nicely. I really liked certain bits of his dialogue when he was in like actual Arnold form, and I quite like the family thing. The poor writing let it down quite significantly, and again, like, just not developing it as much as it should. Like, there was good ideas there was a robot who actually has no humanity but was displaying the best aspects of it, and that's great. But the film barely did even realize that that's what it was doing.
That was the thing. Like, it was too big a thing to just touch on, and as well, I thought it was I didn't fully dislike the family thing, but because I thought it was at times quite funny, and I believed somehow that he needs a job, and I believed him that he would become a painter decorator, because
it was lovely.
It's kind of like it's a robot's job almost.
Yeah, no, it was good because especially, and I think they should have done this more. Like, they show at the end his like scanner vision, and the fact that he sees literally sees on like a different spectrum. And I was like, yeah, of course he'd be really good at the aesthetic eye. Like, he sees things in like objective truth. And the bit where he's talking about drapes, very endearing. Like, I like.
So that was my favorite moment of the movie, mate.
Yeah, he's gained a sense of aesthetic, and again, I honestly wouldn't have even mind his van falls off a plane at one point in one of the more ridiculous escalations in the film.
Yeah.
And I honestly wouldn't mind if he'd even lamented the van a bit, because, like,
that would have been good.
That would have, because, it's just, it's a machine he uses to do his job. I have a feeling he'd feel a connection to that van. I really liked the character of Carl. I thought that he deserved to be in a better film. I thought the idea of a Terminator that successfully does his job, but too late to actually save the Skynet is great. What he does what he does thereafter, even better. I would watch a film about just that. I would watch like Old Man Schwarzenegger, a great topic for a film. Like, what does the assassin robot do afterwards? But thoroughly squandered.
I used to love Terminator so much that I've actually thought about this before. What you said, it's like, if it completed its mission, what would it do? Would it just go and shut down somewhere? I don't know, but it's great. But the issue is that the concept of the Terminator kind of learning some humanity was explored definitely not to this extent, but at least more consistently in T2. So it's that thing I said again where Sarah Connor's interactions, her really hateful interactions with this Terminator, I get why it's happening because, like, he shot her son, but she did this, she learnt the humanity. It just completely zilches. It makes T2 pointless because she had that when he first showed up in T2, and, you know, she didn't trust him and she didn't like him being near John. And then at the end, actually, you know, she came round and understood and they'd kind of come together. Now, I know that it's slightly different in this one, but it was often doing it in a way that didn't acknowledge that she'd already had this struggle. Yeah, it was just anything that was ever good about it was undercut tenfold by the bad.
Yeah,
for me.
I mean, given that this film is supposed to be the canonical sequel to T2, like, it really just shits on the legacy of it. Like,
Yes.
it might as well, you could have told me, in fact, it might as well be the canonical sequel to T1. Like, for the amount that it, yeah, like you said, there is so much to explore. And like you said, like, Terminator has always been about, like, unstoppable forces and chases, but it's also just been about, if you make a sentient killing machine, how does the sentient and the killing machine reconcile with one another? Yeah, there was so much to do with that. It was, and they just, yeah, they just didn't. They, again, I think they just rushed through it, didn't they? I guess that's what it was.
It's just embarrassing because if this is like, no sir, it's time for the original creators to take the reins, it's like, well, I'm afraid you actually made a product indistinguishable from if just some assholes picked up a Terminator 6. In fact, worse, like this was like straight to DVD Terminator.
I wouldn't recommend seeing this in the cinema. But I would say that when it's out invariably on Netflix or Amazon Prime next year, that you should probably watch it. And that's really poor because these are, you know, this is like Terminator is supposed to be a spectacle. It's supposed to be a big fun spectacle. And as it stands, it's just the sort of thing I'd probably watch while about to fall asleep.
You know, it led in the field for action and science fiction. The action in T2, like, I'm not exaggerating here, it is unparalleled. It's just like amazing still because it's not just about what they accomplish, because I know that we might have more gizmos, but it's just the thought that he put into the physicality of it.
It's so weighty. That's what I love about it. And there are a couple of moments in this where there's like the weight, like the sledgehammer fight. I thought like had the appropriate amount of weight to it, but like it's glimpses and then it's gone.
And then suddenly he's flying all over the place almost, and you crawling across a chain link
liquid metal
fence.
Stuff and all that. Yeah. Just make a fucking big scary robot. He is one of the weaker parts. Like I said, his power set is confusing. I would have much rather if it was just, again, a big robot. Like, and it can still be evolved. Like, it can still have new tricks and gadgets and stuff. Keep it as fundamentally the same, like, unstoppable juggernaut.
I'm furious.
Yeah, no, I'm really annoyed. It's I honestly don't think we're probably. I know James Cameron obviously is spilling the obligatory sequel stuff, but I honestly think this is probably it. Like,
I hope so.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's old. Linda Hamilton's old. James Cameron himself is very old. Edward Furlong, despite being only 40, looks like he's nearly dead.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they've got another shot, and I think they really fucking blew it. I think I already touched on improvements. Continuity all over the place. Like, I know time travel continuity is obviously hard to do well and explain succinctly.
That being said, I think is the big fucking tag there.
Exactly.
Though, Aaron,
no, exactly. That's what I mean. Because even then, you can do it so much better than this, and with such little effort. Like, and again, like you said, just a fundamental inability to acknowledge T2. Like, if you just, and again, it needed to only be in text crawl to explain away the death of John Connor and the, like you said, like the new Skynet and like the new robots and stuff. And there's just so much that doesn't quite fit. And I've obviously gone onto the internet, I've gone into the Heart of Darkness, and I've read nerds arguing about whether Dark Fate makes sense or not. And even they're not sure. Like, no one can agree as to whether this film is actually in any way temporally sound.
The same problem occurred twice in this movie, and this is quite petty, but you know what? Fuck it. No, it's not, because they were banking on me respecting the legacy of Terminator. And old Arnie says that after he killed young John Connor, who we saw was basically the same age as he was in T2, he then met a woman with a baby and then decided to raise that family. Right. So Terminator 2 is in what's from like 1991.
Yep.
Edward Furlong in that is supposed to be, let's say, between 12 and 16 years old, probably not 16.
I think he's younger than that. I think he's between, an article I saw put him between 10 and 13. So
there you go. Yeah, he's tiny. The kid, when we meet him, the kind of adopted son of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, is still a teenager. Like, it's been 30 years.
Makes no sense whatsoever. So much of this doesn't make sense because, as well, like Dani Ramos,
yeah,
and her, there's a future shot of her, and she looks identical, despite the fact this is supposedly 2000. And I looked this up. It's supposedly like 2019, and so in 2042, or no, sorry, in 2000. 35, she looks identical, despite the fact that an actual holocaust of humanity has been occurring.
Not only does she look identical, but she saves the young teenage Grace, again, who seems kind of like John Connor aged, who then survives into adulthood and is then sent on a mission by Danny. It's just, how long is this person fucking living?
No respect at all. And I do honestly blame, like, I do think that this is nearly entirely the fault of, like, the screenplay. Like, I would love to see the script. I don't know if it exists. I haven't checked. I don't think it probably will. Just, like, at the very best, it was like salad dressing to them. They were just like, this, no one's paying attention to this. But like you said, like, unfortunately, respect for Terminator is a double-edged sword, and what you think people might be willing to hand wave, they will actually think about obsessively.
I will say, I mean, just to dive one time more back into improvements, as much as I wanted to like these new characters, and as much as, you know, Grace could have been interesting, half human, half Terminator, by the way, already did that in Terminator Salvation, but whatevs. Yeah, I think that the only way that the weighty parts of this movie could have been salvaged is it should have just been a movie about Sarah Connor and the Terminator that killed John Connor. I think the rest of it kind of weighed the rest of that down.
Weighed down by the complete wrong things, or the complete wrong legacies of the Terminator franchise.
Well, it seems, I mean, I know we talked a little bit about the future, but this, much like Terminator Salvation, is the planned first in a trilogy. And much like Terminator Salvation, I would put loads of money on this bombing and that trilogy not happening. Not just for the aforementioned.
I thought this was supposed to be the finishing of a trilogy. I didn't realize that. Well, I can believe it though, because again, everything needs to be a free movie plan. Yeah, so does that mean are they going to do like a weird like a 5-film set where it's both like a trilogy of 1, 2, 3 and then a trilogy of 3, 4, 5? Is that the plan right now?
Well, that's James Cameron's vision. I mean, obviously they pulled McGee's Terminator trilogy because, you know, very few people apparently went to see Terminator Salvation, which is weird because me and all the cool people I know saw it. But he says that he wants, it's much like with Ridley Scott saying that he wants there to be a new Blade Runner trilogy. It's like, where do you go with this? And James Cameron says he wants it to culminate with some kind of truce and reconciliation between artificial intelligence and humanity. And it's just like, it's not what this story's about, mate. And frankly, the end of this movie was just so like listless and kind of just, it fell off the end of itself. Listen, mate, I'm a nerd. I couldn't care less. It won't be good, and it probably won't happen.
Yeah,
what a waste.
I don't think it will. Yeah, indeed, what a waste, I think, is the thing. And again, I don't even feel that they particularly set up a sequel in this one. And that's the thing. So it's not even like it's like a Justice League or Batman vs Superman affair where they sort of like scuppered their own, which would be fitting for David S. Goyer, where they like scuppered their own plans on the altar of like sequeldom. Yeah, they just sucked. And yeah, I probably will show anyone who cares about Terminator a choice few clips of Arnold Schwarzenegger talking, because he's very charming.
I completely concur with that. So.
I'm pretty much done on this one. Like I said, I think it's time to forget.
Time to forget, indeed. This is probably
like Sarah Connor said, drink to forget.
One of the most forgettable movies I think I'll see this year. Really came out of a can. Miss it. Check out some of the choice moments on streaming or on YouTube.
Yeah, there'll be a good compilation, I imagine. Yeah, thoroughly depressing.
But also, don't worry about it, because we'll always have Terminator 1 and Terminator 2.
Which I plan to rewatch, if nothing else, so that's good. It made me remember what's really important in life, which is Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
There you go. We've been Checked for Traps. The meaning of life is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Thank you.